Hey guys, Bo Billington here, sitting with Dan Morris. Appreciate you taking the time, Dan.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to be here.
Yeah, and so Dan and I collaborated on an article recently concerning, outsourced VP of sales, and it's one thing to do that in the written word, but another thing entirely to do that, verbally. So, wanted to get Dan in the room for a few moments and just do a lightning round with them in regards to, outsourced VP of sales. What does that look like? How can a company leverage somebody like him? And really just kind of get into the details. Dan, thanks for joining.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, how long have you been doing this?
About 5 years. The model's been evolving, and the fractional VP side of things has been dedicated for about 18 months now.
Yes. Excellent. And so, how does a company know when to leverage somebody with your expertise? Because obviously, not all companies need an outsourced VP. Some do, and some don't even know that they do, right? So, how would a company know when it's time to reach out to somebody like yourself and get a dialogue conversation started?
Yeah, so what we've seen is that in the change from being sales consultant, look at strategy only,
Mm-hmm.
to the fractional VP, which is an integrated part of a customer's team,
Mm-hmm.
we realized that the people who are hiring need time, or they need experience, or they need both. And so,
Right.
most CEOs don't have time, most people don't have time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so most CEOs don't have the time or experience to develop a repeatable sales process and run a successful sales organization.
Right.
And they'll quite often, when they reach out to us, have failed in some way. They'll have brought in a sales team or a sales rep or a sales leader who's fallen and failed. And that hurts. They don't want to let people down. They don't want to not grow their business. They don't want to waste money. But often they've had that experience before they realize, hey, this is not something I find straightforward. It's not in my immediate focus. And so they reach out and they need some help with doing that.
Great point. And that's been my experience as well with majority of companies where they think that if they just hire a senior salesperson that carries a bag, that will cure all. And a lot of times that's not the case. And there's something else that may be broken within the organization that is not allowing the salesperson to achieve the goals that they were hired to achieve, right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like from your perspective? What could some of those triggers be, or pitfalls, or issues that these companies really need to fix? And they can fix these by bringing in somebody with your background.
Yeah, I mean, triggers that we really notice is that they're trying to maximize the performance, but they don't know how. They're just thinking, if I add more salespeople, then I'm going to get more sales. But they know they haven't maximized the performance of the team that they've got already. They've tried a scattergun approach of loads of different strategies, and some of them have worked and revenues increased,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not really sure what they did. They're just trying to add more.
Yeah.
And so, then when they want to try and be more efficient with the use of capital,
Mm-hmm.
they recognize that they're out of their depth and could use some help. In maybe not even out of their depth in terms of experience, but time, right? Like when you're
Sure.
growing a business, you need a lot of time to run the business and look after the rest of the teams.
Absolutely.
So bringing in somebody who's got the time and the experience to help them think something through. And what we recognize is quite often they're doing things quite well. And if they just do those things better,
Mm-hmm.
the, the, the revenue is going to accelerate anyway. So they
Absolutely.
might not need more people straight away.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you kind of do the heavy lifting and allow the business leaders to get back to what they do best and focus on the business and driving strategic direction versus
Yeah,
getting bogged down in sales, which a lot of times may not even be in their wheelhouse,
right.
right? So in that vein, I think a good follow-up question would be in regards to size, right? So, does a solopreneur or a company of five, could they benefit from an outsourced sales leader, or would it be better, or maybe they have kind of some of the bits and bytes of the sales team, 2, 3, 4, 5 salespeople? Is there a perfect mix to bring in somebody like yourself? Can you share a little bit about what that may look like?
Yeah, so most of the businesses that hire us have got a salesperson at least, or a couple of salespeople. They're
Mm-hmm.
spending money on lead generation, and the CEO is currently running the team. We've definitely been into businesses that do have a VP that used to be a salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
and they need more experience to be able to be more strategic, step into that management structure, and
Right.
be able to set that thing up so that we can then step back and they can rock and roll. So a couple of things. It's are we helping the executive team to get something done? Are we helping the sales team to succeed, coaching, management, and training? Both of those things are very real. But you mentioned triggers before. Sometimes they're trying to go either up market to enterprise or down market to SMB, and they've not done that before. Or they found that they've got a flat spot and they're not sure why. And they've tried everything that they can think of, and they know they want somebody to come in and help them rethink it. So they're typically the triggers. And it's in those size of companies that are revenue-wise typically between 500,000 and about 30 million is where we do most of our business.
Got it. Makes sense. No, I appreciate that. And I think a lot of companies who benefit from an objective advisor, which at the end of the day, your job is to kind of help them see their gaps. And a lot of times when you're in the business, it gets myopic and you don't even realize the gaps that you're encountering on a daily basis, right? So a couple more questions. So you mentioned the size company of 10 million to 30 million, which makes sense. What about industry? Are there any industries that are primed for an outsourced leader? And furthermore, would B2B or B2C, is there a kind of a better focus for an organization that maybe could leverage somebody with your expertise?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've worked in 20 industries so far. All of them are business to business. We worked in service businesses like agencies and businesses that are operating that service or agency model. We've also worked with software companies selling to enterprise or to SMB. That's from marketing technology to legal tech to actually building software. Those are all B2B transactions. They're all transactions that are sort of $15,000 and north. Generally, we do work with businesses that are doing smaller transactions that are higher value. So there's a good broad amount of business that we've worked with. I know there are many other use cases outside of that for VPs that have got perspective from those industries as well, but that's really where we're focused.
Got it. Okay. And there's a lot of buzz these days around, not only of course outsourcing and sales leader, that's great, but fractional leadership. I mean, can you speak a little bit about, when that may make sense, what the difference between, a fractional leader and a fully, outsourced sales leader is? And then finally, is this something that you would do indefinitely, or, should you bring in a leader for 3, 6, 9 months? A little bit of light from that perspective would be interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually see there's a very big difference in mindset between having an outsourced sales leader versus a fractional VP. The fractional VP is what we do because it involves being involved in the team, right? Being part of that team for a period of time. And generally, we'll go in and we'll do a review, first of all, in the first month. We'll look at everything they're doing. We'll look at their systems, their processes, their documents. We'll work with their team and understand what they're actually doing. And then we start making recommendations and rolling those out within the first couple of months. It's quite common for us to be on an engagement with a client for well north of 9 months.
Sure.
We've also done a lot shorter than that as well, if there's just a consulting period that's required. But really, it is to help the business get to that next stage. And quite often it's to the point where they feel confident to spend the money on a full-time sales leader. Because one of the value propositions of a fractional VP is that it's a much lower cost than having a full-time VP of sales.
Absolutely.
And that also a lot of VPs of sales are much more successful when there's a repeatable model in place that they can come in and run. And one of the things that we're particularly good at is setting those things up so that more expensive VP, you'll see more of a return on investment because they'll get up to speed quicker. And of course, we can actually help with that selection process as well and make sure they get somebody who's going to thrive at running that system. And so there is no end time. If the company's working well and we're helping them to grow, that's great. It's a good partnership. But really, it's normally to get people to that next stage.
Got it. So at the end of the day, your job really, it sounds to me like, is to work yourself out of a job, right? And that could be in 3 months, 6 months, could be a year. But ultimately, it's you sitting down with the client, sitting down with the customer, and really determining when that has happened.
Yeah, Mindracer's mission is to help 1,000 companies add their next $1 million to their revenue by the end of 2025. So we definitely want to get in, add value, hand over, get a great endorsement, and move on to lots of other projects where we can help more people. And that's what we're focused on. We're helping people, we're getting them results quickly, we're helping them understand and feel comfortable with that, and then moving on. And obviously, we're then an extended advisor to them whenever they need us to make sure that they get support whenever they need it.
Excellent point. And so last question, give some examples of some of the actual work that a company would maybe expect from an outsourced VP of sales, like, some of the blocking and tackling. You mentioned, helping them hire, setting up a team, but what are some of the actionable items that you actually take on a daily basis with some of your clients?
Yeah, so the first place is always to get a really good understanding of what they've actually done so far and what they're doing right now. So it's looking back at all of the things that they've done for marketing campaigns, what's worked, what hasn't worked, right into things like web analytics and email performance and those sorts of things to see what's generating leads for them and what works. Being able to look at, hey, is there something that we should be doing again that's fallen off or that didn't work?
Sure.
Also then looking at other strategies that we've seen work across lots of different industries, bringing in ideas that can add a lot of value to that business at that time. And, this year's been a big pivot time for everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
We have an SMB focused SaaS client that was doing all of their sales from trade shows and partner referrals. And what we've done is we've helped them to make their virtual sales process massively efficient, and they've tripled their revenue this year. So that's been something, and they're a 7-year-old company. So they're an established business. They've been steadily trying to grow. And our engagement was to help with that. And even through COVID, we've helped them to double down on what they're really good at. And that's coaching the salespeople. It's helping the execs plan for headcount that they're going to need. It's making the systems run as efficiently as they can, providing things like agendas for sales meetings so they can run effectively, and then making sure that the CRM is set up in a way that actually mirrors the sales process that should work for that business, and then making sure people are using it by having useful pipeline conversations that move deals along, rather than just the round robin of, hey, what are you closing this week?
Sure.
So they're the sorts of things that we would do. So, strategy, support, brainstorming on what can happen next, and then coaching the team and implementing. And the thing I haven't mentioned yet is the access to resources. Making sure that these lean teams can get the people that they need to get things done. And from content creation to marketing strategies to finding people to do parts of their sales process that they've never done before, quite commonly adding in effective SDRs and that sort of thing.
That's a great point. Access to talent, access to resources that maybe you have that a resident company doesn't. And then a point you brought up earlier too about pivot and COVID. I mean, like, work and the way people were doing things before is no longer working in this COVID world. There's so much noise. It's really been interesting. And in my business in particular as well, I've had to learn how to resonate with companies differently. And I think you bring up a good point that companies could really leverage somebody with your expertise during these times where they're sitting back and they're reflecting and thinking, what do we do? We had a process that worked, COVID happened, and now we're lost. And I think, that's a great point, could be a great catalyst for bringing in somebody with your background, to really help them look holistically at the business, what worked previously, what's not working now, but maybe what can we do and pivot so we can kind of change the results in the future.
Yeah, it's something that we very much enjoy. We've been lucky to partner with people who recognized they needed to pivot and were open to doing so in a way that enabled the process. We certainly have had an incredibly busy year with people bringing us in even closer than ever to do more because there's been so much change going on. And the learnings around that have been really, really intense. And we've been proud to deliver a lot of value, and the company's really growing in this period when others were not. But something that creates is opportunity. Absolutely. And I think the other thing to note is that, businesses that are looking at partnerships and the channel, can often have that reinvigorated by bringing in somebody who's got outside eyes and looks at a lot of different businesses and can recognize potential partnerships and synergies there where they could actually work with each other's clients and really add a lot of value. And that's something else that we sort of build into, hey, is this an opportunity right away for us?
Sure.
And that's good fun to execute and adds a lot of revenue.
No, absolutely. I think companies should look at bringing in somebody like yourself as an opportunity, and that's something they should get excited about and not necessarily think about it that they're bringing somebody like you because there's an issue, right? And I think there's a paradigm shift and there's a different way to look at it. And again, I think somebody like you drives opportunity versus just fixes things, and that's a great perspective to have.
It is, yeah. I mean, like you mentioned before, the trigger is quite often, hey, we recognize now that we need some outside help.
Right.
We recognize now that we don't know this part and we could use somebody who does. And then when we develop the relationship and we're regularly in those weekly calls and brainstorming with the execs, many more things come out because you begin to see how they think and you begin to see what they really want to do in the next couple of years. And then we can just keep adding in more things that make sense while keeping it doable, right? It's easy to come up with 50 ideas, difficult to execute them. So really it's a case of making sure we prioritize the things that are going to add value now and keep on the not now list the stuff that we're going to do next. And so, yeah, that is how the relationships progress and, how we build roadmaps together to keep adding value as the business grows.
Awesome. Well, hey, Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Hopefully for everybody listening, and you've heard some great tips and tricks from Dan in regards to Outsourced VP of sales, how to leverage, when to leverage, some of the warning signs that may help you understand that maybe you need somebody like Dan to help your business get from where you are to the next level. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. I hope it was helpful for everybody and be well.
Absolutely.